Welcome to the Lighthouse Financial Advisors Money Over 50 podcast with Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue. This information is general in nature and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. Therefore, you should consider whether the information is appropriate for you and your personal circumstances. If you require personal advice, please contact Lighthouse Financial Advisors. Here are your hosts, Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue.
Welcome to today's episode of Mythbusters. I'm Adam Savage. I'm here today with Jamie Heineman.
I mean, that's not at all what this is, but it's the financial equivalent. So today is Financial Mythbusters. So we wanted to go through a list of the most common myths that we hear and either agree or disagree or refute or non-refute, as depending on how the case may be.
I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah,
it's.
I feel like I've had these conversations, each of these things. I've had these conversations in probably 100 times each, and so now I'm looking forward to having this recorded, so that the next time someone says one of these things, I can just forward them the link to this podcast. Go and listen to that. I don't want to talk about it. I'm sick of it.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea because it's something I've wanted to do for a while.
Yeah.
And they're financial myths that we hear all of the time, so we wanted to bust them today.
Yeah.
And we'll do it by theme at the start. So the first one, because I know that you really dislike this one.
I feel very strongly about this.
You feel very strongly about this one, is car myths.
Yeah.
Or vehicle myths.
Yeah. The reason I think I feel very strongly about this is that, like a lot of these myths, there's a bit of backfilling that goes on where people want to buy a new car and then they feel that they need to come up with a reason why they should do that. And so all of these different things are basically, I don't know whether it's conscious or subconscious. In a lot of cases, we've got the issue of someone deciding they want to do something and then reasoning their way back into why they should be able to do it. So another little bit of a little message out to Spence, my old MMA coach, who I use some of his pearls of wisdom sometimes. We used to talk about buying cars in the gym and everyone have a reason why they wanted to do it. And Spence was the only one who actually said to me one day something that made sense, which was, I wanted to buy a Hummer and so I did, and that's it. I went, well, you can't argue with that.
He just wanted to drive
a Hummer, and that's what he did.
In a really big car.
Yeah. So some of the most common myths that we hear with regards to cars, you should turn your cars over every 3 years.
Yes. So I hear this one a lot.
Yeah.
People buy a new car or they lease a car and they tell me, oh, look, you've got to turn them over every 3 years, which means get a new one every 3 years because they lose too much value if you
hold them for longer than that.
What that means is that they're forever in debt,
Yep.
and they're forever making a lease payment,
Yep.
Or they're forever making a repayment on the vehicle.
Yep.
And what they don't see is the opportunity cost. So if you go back to episode 3, which is drive a $15,000 car to draw.
That must be your favourite podcast episode.
I've referenced it a lot. Look, I mean, it's just one of those ones where if I drive a car that I fully own for the last 15 years of my working life and I put what I was going to put in the repayments to that car, if I put that into my superannuation fund, then I get to go on an overseas holiday for the first 20 years of my retired life and spend $20,000 a year on that holiday before that extra money that I've accumulated runs out.
Yes.
So I would much prefer that than the new car spell.
Yeah. And I think this is one that there's a thing about the psychology of human decision making is that, we are really drawn to vivid things. And so what I mean there is, if you've got a car loan repayment of $300 a fortnight or $300 a week or whatever the amount is, that just comes out every fortnight. We don't see that. We don't think about what the effect of that is. But if you drive an old car and something goes wrong and you have to replace the transmission and it costs $1,500, we curse and punch the wall and think that our life's ending because we've had to come up with $1,500. not thinking about it of, well, if my car loan repayment was $300 a week, that's just over a month's worth of repayments.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's a myth. Myth is that I've got an old car.
Yeah, the maintenance is going to cost.
And the maintenance is, we hear that one a lot as well.
Yeah.
The maintenance is going to cost me more than the repayments on a new car.
That's just not true.
Absolutely a myth. Yeah. Absolute myth.
And I think as soon as you say that to people, it's kind of, that's a good one where once you pull them up on that, most people give a bit of a wry smile and go, well, yeah, but I just want a new car. Go, okay, that's fine. But it's not the maintenance on that. I've driven old cars all my life. I've been relatively lucky with some of them. Other ones, I've had big maintenance bills, and I can still tell you that I'm a long way in front of the car loan repayments that I would have made over that time. It's just a complete myth. And like many of these myths, you've got to think about who is telling you that. So the person who's telling you to turn your car over every 3 years, why would they be telling you that? They're probably a car salesman or a car lease salesman or some equivalent like that.
Yeah, for sure. Look, it's one of those ones that there's a variation too. I mean, when you touched on it before, say you are driving an old bomb that does cost you, start costing you money. Yeah. So the decision tree isn't to hold that bomb or buy a brand new expensive car. Yeah. There's a middle ground there.
That's right.
So I pay cash for an as new. $15,000 car.
Exactly.
And that gives me none of the problems that my old bomb gives me.
Yep.
And I fully own it, so I'm not paying it off, and I can put all that money that I was going to pay on the lease repayment to the $50,000 to $60,000 to $80,000 car. Straight into my superannuation, off my mortgage or whatever.
That's a good point. I think that there's, like a lot of those decisions, it doesn't have to be one extreme or the other. There is scope to, yes, at some stage your car will just break down and you will not be able to drive it anymore.
Yep.
You will have to replace it, but it doesn't have to be with a brand new car with a lease or a loan attached or anything like that. So I think those are the couple of the car myths, which is you should turn it over every 3 years. I'm going to spend more in maintenance on my old car than what a new car would cost me. The third one I've got here, which I hear a lot of, and this one kind of makes more sense to me from, again, the psychology of how people spend money. A lot of people that I talk to, just before they retire, they want to buy a new car and say, well, this car will see me out. Or,
which is a funny one, because those same people also say that, oh yeah, mum's still alive at 95.
Yeah,
and she lives in
want one of these
house
cars that you can buy at 65 and goes for 30 years.
I need to buy a new car at 65. This will see me out. I'm like, when do you think you're going to
stop
drop
driving?
off the perch? I mean, if you've got longevity in your family and medical advancements are only getting better, then you're going to live a long time. Like, people cannot fathom that length of time that they're going to spend in retirement. Yeah,
but I think the main one that there's sort of two parts to it that people don't really think all the way through with this. And like I say, this myth, I can see how people arrive at that, wanting to buy a new car before they retire. And in some cases, it's really more of them actually trying to do a bit of future planning and try and get set up for retirement, which is an admirable thing to think about. The two parts to it though are, number one, you're going to live a lot longer than what you think. So you probably that car may not see you out. Secondly, even if that were the case, if you take $30,000 at age 65 and go and buy a brand new car, if you had just left that money in your retirement savings and got a 7% return on that $30,000 would have doubled over 10 years. So if you were able to get your existing car to cruise along for another 10 years before you had to replace it, your $30,000 that you would now be worth $60,000. So it's not as though...
And the price of the new cars come down to $22,000.
This is exactly...
That's the one thing that's actually dropping in relative price is vehicles. So.
Yeah, so you're taking money out of something that's going to grow in value, which is your retirement savings, your superannuation, your pension account, whatever the case may be. You're taking $30,000 out of that to buy something that's going to drop in value versus leaving it in there, letting that grow, and then if at some stage in the future you do need to replace that car, you can just take the amount that you actually need at that point in time.
Yep. Agreed.
So
we move on to house myths.
House myths. This is my
like this one
second
well,
favourite one. People are going to think I'm some weirdo who lives in a caravan and doesn't drive anywhere, which isn't quite the case. But so house myth, another one that I think if you look at the car myths are normally just people want to buy a new car and they want a reason to do it. The housing myth is sometimes it's a combination of the two, where people either want to buy a new house or they want to upsize or do something like that, and they just want to justify it. But then there is also a fair component there of, I think people want to do the right thing financially, and there may just be some of these myths that, especially in Australia, we have had ingrained from an early age. The one that I remember hearing when I was a kid growing up, and you don't hear it quite as much anymore in the last few years, but property doubles every 7 years, or another variation of that is property always goes up. Now this has been shown in the last 5 years in Townsville here that just isn't the case. Number one, property prices haven't doubled over the last 7 years, and in most cases they've actually gone down over the last 7 years.
Yeah, so, absolutely. They've definitely gone down.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, and I think that's it's sort of so that property doubling every 7 years, or property always going up in value, ties into another bit of a myth that you hear about is people talking about breaking into the property market, and it's as though it's a never-ending wave of rising prices where if I don't get in now, I'll never be able to get in because house prices will rise by 10% a year for the rest of my life, and I'll be left out in the cold.
Look, you hear that a lot, and I mean, most of those people that want to break into things, that's just become a thought that's entered their head. Yeah. Because you say, where's your deposit? Yeah. And
yes.
Well, they don't have one.
Yes. Yeah.
And this is generally younger people we're talking about here, not mid-50s people, but can be for older people as well. So, I mean, it brings in a whole series of myths here. Yeah. So you have to break into the property market early. Yeah. The other myth that you hear is that, look, I can afford I'm paying $300 a week in rent, and my repayments will only be $350 a week. Yeah. So it's only costing me an extra $50. Yeah. Wrong. Absolutely wrong.
Now, the good thing about this is that, so I still rent, but you own. Yeah. So the good thing is now, you've owned for a few years now, so I always can come back to this thing of you've kept a track of all the money that's been spent.
I've kept a track. Like, people grossly underestimate what it costs to maintain a house. So, in full disclosure here, I'm fully aware that the best financial decision for me would not to be to own my house. Yep. I could rent for cheaper in the grand scheme of things. Yep. So it's a life, I'm prepared to wear that cost every year for lifestyle. Yeah. Because we live in a great street, and
you want to be there long term.
You want to be there long term.
All these lifestyle choices.
But it's a cost. I fully. There is an absolute opportunity cost there. But people grossly underestimate what it costs to maintain a house. Yeah. Like, I think minimum it's $10,000 a year. So if we just look at air conditioning, so a full house of new split systems, which last only 10 years to 12 years, is $15,000 to $17,000. So when you look at it from that angle, it's costing you somewhere in the vicinity of $1,500 every year
for aircon,
just to replace one tiny little element of your house, which is air conditioning. Yeah. Forget about painting. Forget about all those other things, which costs many more times that. Yeah. And this is paint a house. This is inside and out.
Again, because you actually are in this situation, it's great because this isn't you talking about what you think might maybe happen in the future. This is costs that you have incurred over the last 3-4 years.
Over the last 3 or 4 years. Yeah. And there's more to come very soon. Yeah. Because it needs a paint inside and out. Yeah. We've had termite damage. Yeah. We've had these are the things that people just never ever consider.
And those are the I find I can kind of understand if we under budget for home maintenance and those sorts of things. Unless you've owned a house, you probably don't know all the things that can go wrong in a house. But again, going back to your point of if my rent's $300 a week and I can pay my loan repayments for $350, there are other expenses that we know.
Add $200 for maintenance on average, because those are $10,000 a year. So it's now $550. Yeah.
Now we haven't even got into rates. We haven't.
What is it for rates then?
It's about another $7,000 a year for your rates and your insurance.
For your rates and your insurances. So there's
another
150 a week. Yep. So you're up to 700 a week.
Yeah.
Versus 300 a week.
Yeah.
So.
And that actually ties. This is all flowing very neatly. It's almost like we planned it, which we really didn't. There wasn't much science behind the planning of this, but. The next myth that once people have arrived at that point of, well, yes, I can rent for 300, or I can own that house for 700, but at the end of the day, I'll own my house. And the next myth is renting is dead money, and I think that we would, to some degree, that is correct, in as much as the rent that you pay, you're never going to get that back. But I would actually make the argument that the money that you're paying in rates, the money that you're paying in insurances, the money that you're paying in interest to the bank, that's all dead money as well.
Absolutely.
And so you're not getting any of that back. The only thing that you are getting back is the actual principal repayment on the loan that you've got, and any potential capital growth in the property, which, as we just discussed, does not mean it's going to double every 7 years. It's long term, somewhere in the range of 3%. So
that's right. And we're not saying don't do it, but make sure it fits in your overall plan, and know with your eyes wide open what you're doing as well, like, because you hear these things that people say that are just myths, like we're dispelling today.
Yeah.
I
think that ties into the again, you just said a phrase before that we think about a lot, opportunity cost, which for many people we don't really take into account, is that if I'm paying $700 a week for all of my ownership costs of a house versus $300 a week to rent, assuming I blow all of that spare $400 a week, then yes, I am no better off doing that. But there is an opportunity cost to coming up with that extra $400. If I was to take that $400 and set it aside and invest it elsewhere, or contribute it into superannuation, or any number of other ways that you could use that money, that has to be taken into account when we're looking at what is the effect of renting versus home ownership.
Yep.
The last myth about home ownership, and this one doesn't really make sense to me, is when people say, I can kind of understand most of the rest of these, but then sometimes people say my house is my super, or my home is my super.
Yeah, you hear that a lot. The other one that people will say is, "Oh no, my house is my super," or "My house is it's a huge asset."
Yeah.
And you go, well, are you going to sell that to put that into your super fund to draw an income from?
Yeah.
And they say no. Yeah. So it can't be.
No, unless you can draw an income from it, it's not an asset.
Yeah.
And that is one where I think, again, that is a myth. As soon as you push back on that, you kind of get people very quickly see that it's a very glib thing to say, my home is my super. That may be the case. If you are going to sell your house at retirement and invest that money in a way that you can draw an income from it and meet your income needs in retirement, then I guess, yes, your house is behaving like your superannuation savings in that case. But for most people, that's not normally what they're talking about.
That's right.
That ties a bit into, there's another bit of a myth that we hear all the time of, people like analogies, and no one likes analogies more than us. We love a good analogy, but where we hear a myth is when something is compared to something else that it's not the same as. So my home is my super is an analogy of it's like my super. It isn't at all. It's a completely different thing. Your house is a consumption item. It is something that you are consuming and that is costing you money. You have to live somewhere, so no one's saying that you shouldn't have a home. But it's not anything like your retirement savings that you can draw an income from when you're retired. There's similar sort of another myth that I hear all the time, and we're sort of moving on from the property side of it now, is people that will say to me, particularly small business owners, that will say, my business is my super. And this one kind of makes a bit more sense to me because most people are thinking, when I retire, I will sell my business and I will use those sale proceeds to invest in a way that I can draw an income from. That may be the case, but for most people, they haven't actually really done those calculations and worked out what their business is actually worth.
The devil's in the detail, isn't it? The devil
is in the details.
Because there are whole industries that you basically cannot sell any goodwill in that business.
No, that's right.
And some of these businesses are big businesses, like electrical businesses are a good example of that.
Yes.
So upon retirement, no one's prepared to pay you any goodwill for that business. What you're selling plant and equipment.
Yes.
So which generally isn't enough. So
and that's, I guess, our point is that you may well be taking in the calculations of a potential business sale into your retirement savings. You might go, well, I'm going to be, if I can sell my business for X amount and I've already got some other savings, that will be enough to give me the amount that I need.
Yep.
But there's some calculations that actually need to go into that, not just saying my business is my super. Is your business going to be saleable for $50,000 or $500,000 or $5 million? You need to know that before you can just make a glib statement like my business is my super.
Yep.
We're business owners, and this is one that we've discussed before, where you go, yes, there is a saleable value to our business, but the way that we think of it is our income that we earn from our business and that we earn from our wages that we pay ourselves, that's really going to be our biggest asset over the next 20 years of our life. We really need to use that income every year to actually be building up our own retirement savings, so that if our business didn't sell for $1, we would still be.
I think that's the key, Dallas. Like where you touched on there, you actually need, if you're a business owner, you need to say, you need to use another myth, which is my business will sell for $1.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Or my
that's right.
business will sell for $0.
Yeah.
Now it's somewhere in the middle there. But if you treat your business, if you assume that your business doesn't have a saleable value at the end of your working life, what you then do is you structure things lot better. Where you have to.
Yes.
You structure things a lot better, where you say, okay, well, I need to generate enough profits out of this business to be able to put away into my retirement savings, so that when I physically don't turn up for work and we sell this business for $1, not the $1 million that people assume that they get for their business, then those people have got enough in their retirement savings from the profits that they've earned every year, and to earn those profits they've got to get organised.
And that's, I guess, another part of the business side of that, is that what we find is getting a bit, assuming that you are going to sell your business for $1 actually makes you really sharpen up for a lot of our business owner clients, and really think about how do I make this business as profitable as possible, and allow me to actually draw some income out every year. And it sort of seems strange, but doing that way actually makes your business more valuable. You've got an asset that you are actually able to draw a profit out of every year. It's then a saleable asset. Whereas if you're just running that along and drawing a wage out of it, and nothing else, then you have no profit to then be able to sell on to someone.
Absolutely. Moving on you've got down here on the list shares. So buying shares is like gambling. We hear that one a lot.
Which is interesting, because I like to gamble.
You like to cap your gambling.
That's true.
And it's an entertainment expense.
Yes. And so I've never thought of, I guess, because of the way that I like to, I enjoy horse racing and all of those sorts of things. I've never thought of buying shares as like that. But I guess
I can see it from the point of view of the actual term of reference, shares. So shares tells me nothing.
That's right.
If I say, if we say buying the largest 200 companies in Australia and buying the largest 1,500 companies in the world is like gambling, it sounds absurd, doesn't it?
That's right.
So I mean, when you coin it that way, if you talk about buying little pieces of the world's most profitable companies, you can quickly see how.
And that's a great, like, to make it even more concrete.
Absurd it is.
If you were to say, again, buying a part of Woolworths is like gambling. It seems very unexciting. It's not as much fun as betting on horses at all. You're basically buying a part of a business that is selling products at a profit every week. It's very different to gambling, and I think the language that we use around that is a lot of the reason that, again, if you're not doing this for a job day in, day out, I can see why people see it that way. Because if you use the language of shares or investing in the one we hear, the share market. The share market, investing in the share market is like gambling, and it may well be. But becoming a part owner in the biggest and most profitable companies in the world, it's nothing like gambling. No. If you're buying a part of Woolworths hoping that the price will go up next week and you can sell it to someone else for a bigger price, then yes, that is like gambling.
Yeah, look, the price will go up and down. The same people that tell you that will say in the short term the price will go up and down, and in the longer term it generally goes
trends up over time.
The same people will tell you this. They'll look at different assets entirely different. So they don't like the volatility or the fluctuation in prices of those companies.
Yeah.
But they actually don't see that with their own house.
Yes.
Because they try and sell their house for $400,000 and the best offer they get is $320,000.
Yep.
And they say, well, no, I'm not selling it for that. It's worth $400,000.
I'm going to hang on to it.
It's not. It's worth $320,000. You put it on the market. The best offer was $320,000.
Yeah.
So that's what it's worth right now.
Yes.
So they look at things a little bit differently there. But you hear that. The other one that we hear as well is that the closer you get to retirement, you should be moving all of your superannuation into cash and conservative defensive assets like cash and fixed interest. Think of that like having a term deposit in your superannuation fund now. That's a myth for most people because it just won't earn them enough money. No. They'll run out of money too quickly in retirement.
That's again one, like you say, where the devil's in the details there. If you're going to retire at 75 and you are going to pass away at 80, yes, you probably should have all of your super in cash. But for most people that we're meeting with, they're retiring at 60 or 65, and as a couple, one of them on average is going to live for 30 years. So moving all of their retirement savings into cash when they retire, you're basically moving into an asset that just isn't going to give you the return that you need to draw an income for 30 years.
Well, I like to visualise when you stop going to work. I like to visualise your money going to work. And think of cash and term deposits, which currently pay in the 1% to 2% rate of interest. They're a fat, lazy worker that you wouldn't actually want to have working for you. Because they're just not pulling their own weight. So what you need is someone that's a bit more sprightly and dresses properly and is a go-getter and things like that. So you need your money to be earning more than 1% to 2% because the problem for most people is that they underestimate two things when they enter retirement: how much they're going to spend every year. Grossly underestimate that.
Particularly taking inflation into account and saying even if you are correct in that first year of how much you're going to spend, 20, 30 years down the road, that income that you need is going to go up.
Absolutely.
Double, triple.
And they underestimate how long they're going to spend in retirement. So what you find is that if you've moved all of your money into cash, as you approach retirement, that 1% to 2% rate of return just isn't anywhere near enough. For most people, that means they're going to be run out of money fully before the 10th year of their retirement. So I'm going to segue a little bit into here. There's something that I think there's a phenomenon, if that's the right word, I don't know if it is, coming into superannuation. That is. I think it's just completely wrong, which is called target dated funds. What that is, if you haven't selected an investment strategy for your superannuation fund, as you move into older brackets, so it's common for when you hit 50, they move your money that you have invested in your superannuation into a more conservative tilt. And then the next one is when you hit 55, for example, they'll move it even more conservative, and then 60, they move it even more conservative. So if you're not looking at it, what they're doing is on your behalf is assuming that you want less volatility. Which is it's the wrong demon. It's the wrong demon to be fighting because it's not the volatility that's going to hurt people in retirement. No, volatility comes and goes. It's moving your money into such a low return that you're going to just plow through it too early. And
this is one where how you invest your retirement savings at retirement. We have read stacks of research paper at different ways to do that. There is a lot of research that has been done and needs to be done, and there's a lot of different decisions that make at that point in time to determine how you should be investing your retirement savings. So again, this is the whole danger of myths and cliches and that sort of thing, isn't it? Is that it's a one size fits all. Yeah, just move all your super into cash when you retire. That may be fine if you've got $10 million in your super fund and you want to spend $50,000 a year. Yeah, move it into cash. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you do. For most people, there are trade-offs and there are decisions that need to be made, and you cannot just make a blanket statement like you should move all your super into cash when you retire. It's something that takes a fair bit of thought and a fair bit of planning.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think another myth about investing in companies, and you'll notice again with the language that we use around, we speak about investing in companies versus shares or the share market for that reason, that we want people to think of it as part ownership of a profitable business rather than as a piece of paper that goes up and goes down. This next myth that we hear all the time is you should try to buy low and sell high. So basically you should try and time the market. And that's, again, if you think of it from the perspective of a part ownership of a company, if I want to buy a part of Woolworths so that I get a share of their profits every year for the next 30 years while I'm retired, and they're going to send me a share of those profits that they're making every year as a dividend, I'm not going to try and pick when I think their price is lower or higher on a day-to-day or a week-to-week basis. It can't be done. No. And it doesn't. Two things, as we've discussed at great length, it can't be done and it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter and it can't be done.
If I'm buying for a share of those profits,
the world's greatest investor ever, Warren Buffett. I remember this during the global financial crisis.
Yeah.
So he bought a whole stack of companies. Because he had loads of cash to do that. Yeah. When the ASX 200 was at 3,900 points. Yep. Thinking that it might have been close to the bottom. Yep. I mean, he would tell you that you could never pick it. Yep. But it actually continued to drop to 3,150.
Yes.
So had he waited, he could have done that.
At a cheaper
and
price.
This is unequivocally the best investor ever graced the earth. Yeah. So it just can't be done. It's just pure luck if you actually manage to buy completely low.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So it goes back to the gambling thing, is that if you're betting on horse racing, you are not going to win over time. That is just fact. You may win one weekend or the next, but you are not going to win over time. And the same thing happens if you are trying to time the market, when to buy companies, when to sell, all that sort of thing. Yep. You may get it right once or twice, or you might get it right sometimes, but on average you are not going to be better off.
Absolutely.
And that's, like we say, the two parts to that are, number one, it's not possible. No one can consistently do it over time. And secondly, if we think of it as buying part ownership of a profitable company, it doesn't matter. If I want a diversified basket of these very profitable companies to pay me dividends every year while I'm retired, I don't really care what I pay for those companies as long as that dividend stream continues to grow over time.
That's right. Yeah. Moving on to tax. So one that I hear all the time is don't work overtime or a second job because you'll just lose it all in tax.
Yep.
And it's a complete myth.
Yes. Yep.
So you cannot be taxed any more than what you earn. You can't even be taxed more than 47% of what you earn.
So this is kind of one where I think this is our financial system, financial literacy of most people in our school system, those kinds of things. These are the sorts of things that we should be learning about that we're just not. Yeah. How our tax system actually works is there are different brackets, and this is, I think, for some people, basically on your first $20,000 you earn, you pay no tax. Then up to $37,000 you pay 19%.
Yep.
From $37,000 up to $90,000 you pay 34.5% if you include your Medicare levy. What I think most people think here is that up to $37,000, if I earn $20,000, if I earn $18,000, whatever that threshold is, if I earn $21,000, then I have to pay 19%.
The whole lot gets taxed at 19%.
And that's just not how it happens.
That is what people think. So they think that as they push up, so 90,000 is a good example, because if you the bracket under that is 34.5% tax, the bracket above that is 39% tax. So they assume if they earn $91,000, the whole $91,000 gets taxed at 39%. But it doesn't. It's just the $1,000 that you earn above that. So and you can earn up to I can't remember if it's $180,000 or $190,000 in that 39% tax bracket before you hit the top rate of tax bracket. So, look, what happens when you get a second job is they tax you extra because they don't know. It's the left hand doesn't know what the right's doing. So, what happens with our tax system? It's a really, really good system at the source. The PAYG system is that. You say that you're not claiming the tax-free threshold because you've already claimed it on your first job. So they'll just tax you extra on that second job. So look, you get a lot of that back when you do your tax return. So what people are saying is that I'm working the second job and I'm working for $15 in the hand or something like that. And you go, well, we I should be getting paid 30. They've taxed me 15. It's an equation like that. Well, what ends up happening is that when they put their tax return in, they get some of that tax back. So there's certainly you just cannot lose out financially by working a second job or working overtime.
No, and that's I think even on like overtime. Again, as an example, there, if you normally earn $1,000 a week, that's $52,000 for the year. If 1 week you do overtime or you work over the weekend and you earn $2,000 for that week, what happens at your payroll is that the payroll is, or the calculation of that is just what did you earn for this last week? You earned $2,000. That just gets extrapolated out to say, we'll assume that you're going to earn that every week for the rest of for this whole year. Therefore, your gross income would be $104,000 if you earn $2,000 a week. So you then get taxed on that week's paycheck as though you were going to earn $104,000, even though that might be the only week that you worked overtime, and over the course of that year you only earned $53,000 rather than $52,000. So as you said, then at the end of the year, that all gets organised and is recalculated, and any extra tax that you've paid throughout that year that you shouldn't have paid, you then get that back.
That's right. Credit cards. This is the one. So this is my number one. I can't stand credit cards because they're abused. They are abused. Well, look, they work really, really well. If done correctly. The problem is most people don't use it correctly. So the one that I hear, and this is my favourite, is that I don't carry forward a credit card debt because I clear my credit card every month. At the end of the month, whatever I put in there, I clear. I go, so what? Because what happens is that there's a high correlation between what that person's after-tax income is and what their credit card bill is at the end of every month. So what we find is that people that, or families that clear $7,000 of income for that month.
It just happens.
It just happens to be that their credit card bill is around $7,000 at the end of every month, so they save nothing. They clear the credit card. Families that have I've seen higher incomes. I've seen family monthly after-tax incomes as high as like $15,000. Guess what? Credit card's $15,000.
But what about
they tack on?
But what about my points, Mike?
Oh, this is the second one that I cannot stand. So, like, people abuse credit cards for the points. And look, if they just spend that time on organising their budget a lot better. And instead of spending everything that they earn, if they could put away $2,000 or $3,000 a month of that money, then forget about the points. They could pay cash for anywhere they wanted to go. So
it's funny. This is your real bugbear, isn't it? I don't feel quite as strongly about this, but I would completely agree that for every person that does this well, the whole thing of I use a credit card and then I've got 15 days of interest free and then I clear the credit card in full. For every person that doesn't spend any more than they would have ordinarily and gets to use the points and gets to all of those things where it works really well. For everyone who does it perfectly and it makes no negative impact, there's another 4 people or another that are just, they're spending more than they should be or that they really would want to be, to try and pick up either a bit of an interest saving on their loans or things like that, or to pick up some points. Which, so if you average that out, you go, there may be someone out there that is doing this perfectly, but I can't imagine that it, on average, it doesn't make sense to do it, for the simple reason that your benefit in terms of, I've had that money sitting in my offset account and then I haven't paid it for 30 days, or I got some points. The benefit is minuscule compared to the risk of most human beings, and I know I'm the same. If I'm tapping a credit card versus actually giving up physical cash, it hurts a lot less. So I'm more likely to overspend. Yeah. So you may be really well behaved 364 days out of the year and not spend anything extra or do anything different, but all it takes is one day where you buy something that you wouldn't have if you had to pay cash, because it's on the credit card, it's a little bit easier. You spend $1,000 or you spend even a couple of $100, that extra bit of an expense wipes out all of the benefit of all of the points, all of the interest savings, all of those things throughout the year. So I guess it's one of those things that in theory it sort of, I can understand why people want to do that. In practice, we just don't see it work. It just doesn't happen. Yeah. It's similar to, it used to be the one that you used to hear was line of credit loans, where people would have a line of credit loan, all of their pay would go in, and then they'd live out of the home loan. That was
exactly the same, mismanaged.
Disaster.
Great in theory, but a disaster in practice. Yeah. Because people would inevitably put all their wage into their mortgage and then pull back off it, and get used to pulling back on that mortgage all the time, anytime they needed money. Yep. So credit card tends to work the same way, just a little bit differently. In that people then get used to clearing it every month, but very, very quickly there's a correlation between what their after-tax income is every month and what's on the credit card.
And that ties very neatly into one of my favourite myths, is that everyone for some reason tells me that they're going to spend $60,000 a year in retirement. And I don't know what is magic about that figure. Every time that I say to someone, how much do you think you'll spend in retirement? They say 60,000. And what you were just saying there is, whatever the amount, for most people, the amount that they're earning is the amount that they spend. There might be some savings, but I see this where we sometimes have a couple who will be currently spending, they're currently taking home net income of $70,000 a year, and they're paying $30,000 in mortgage repayments, which they're going to pay out before they retire. When I ask them how much they're going to spend in retirement, they say $60,000, even though they're spending $40,000 at the moment. On the other extreme, we've got people who are getting net income of $150,000 a year, and when they retire, they say they're going to spend $60,000 a year. And I don't know what it is that's magic about that number, but it seems to be that's what people think that they will spend. And I actually looked at this. I did do some research into this because I was wondering where this figure was coming from. There's a report that basically says that a comfortable retirement in Australia costs $61,500. And the way that I think about that is, comfortable is completely dependent on what you're used to. Yeah. We know this across the globe, is that my day-to-day expenses would be an absolutely luxurious lifestyle to someone who's living in a shanty town in Johannesburg. Yes. And then there are some people who have more money than me that if they had to live like me, they'd probably jump off a bridge somewhere. Yes. So my attitude is, this myth of I'll spend $60,000 a year in retirement, you probably won't. You will spend about what you're spending now. Yeah. And this ties into other episodes of podcasts we've talked about, where how much do I need to retire? How much will I spend in retirement? Should I have a budget? All those sorts of things. I think that it's a better way to work on is to assume that you are the same person. When you retire, you're going to be the same person that you've always been. You're going to spend about the same amount. If that lines up with $60,000 a year, well, then let's work on that. But if it's different to that, let's work off that figure.
Yeah, it's a good point, because if it's different to that, if it's vastly different to that, look, they're the people that we see get into trouble. Yes. Because they say it's $60,000, but as soon as they've retired, and they when they get to the level of retirement savings that can generate a $60,000 income, they say, I want to retire. Yeah. But all of a sudden it's $80,000.
Yeah.
So it is 60 bar for the fact that they didn't paint their house, so they've got
another 20. Yeah.
They got they didn't put down anything for maintenance.
Yeah.
So they've got.
And these are all conversations that we have with people in that last 5-10 years before retirement. I keep looking at this with people where if you're currently spending $80,000 a year now, and you're saying you want to retire on $60,000 a year, what is going to change in your life? Where are you going to find that $20,000 every year? And unless you have a really good answer, I would work the other way and say, let's assume that you're going to keep spending the 80, because it's better, it's safer that way than to say we're going to spend 60, and then, as you say, every year there tends to be something that pops up.
That's right. So you have to get an accurate budget for a start. So there are a couple of podcasts to listen to. Episode 8, which is top 5 reasons retirement plans get derailed. Budget is inaccurate.
Yep.
And also in the new year, we're about to have a New Year's resolutions podcast that will be launched. Our first podcast of the new year, and we speak a lot about getting your current expenses on paper in the budget template, and then looking at shaving that down, culling, reducing, and capping. So that's what you have to do as you approach retirement. You need to have an accurate figure as to what you're going to spend in retirement. But there's a huge discrepancy for people between what they're currently spending now and what they think they're going to spend in retirement, and it's actually bridging that gap. And for most people, the most realistic variation of that is somewhere in between. It's not that they're going to. It's not that they're earning $120,000 after tax now and they're going to spend $60,000. That's unrealistic. Generally, to think that. It's unrealistic to think that they'll be able to afford to continue to pay themselves $120,000 in retirement for a lot of people. So it's bridging that gap somewhere and saying, okay, well, it's $80,000 or it's $75,000 or whatever it is, but it's getting that done well and truly before you're looking at retiring.
And this is the way that I guess I'd think of it is don't tell me what you're going to spend in retirement. Show me by actually living that lifestyle.
Well, I always go back to when I met with that nutritionist and he said, tell me what you ate in the last 24 hours. And I went, oh, he's smart there, because I was going to tell him what I was going to eat in the next 24 hours.
Yeah, I'm going to have,
which is going to be vastly different.
Kale smoothie for breakfast. I'm going to have, chicken and broccoli for lunch, and then you go back 24 hours and go, oh, actually, I had ice cream for dinner and pasta for lunch.
Well, I really loaded up because I was going to see him the next day, and I thought he's going to weigh me, and I want to weigh in as high as possible, and also it might be the last chance I get. So he got me. But I mean, it's always stuck with me because looking backwards is the best indication of what's going to happen. So tell us what you spent in the last year. Don't tell us what you're going to spend in the next year.
That's right.
So that's the first thing, is to get that on paper, what you spent in the last year. And before you look at what you're going to spend the next year. And so one final myth, just to wrap up, is around retirement age. And well, this is just a small one. I mean, people often say to me, they've put the retirement age up, haven't they? And what they're referring to is the age pension age. So the age pension age, depending on when you were born, is 65. Depending on, I don't have the dates and the birth dates right in front of me now, but it's getting pushed up to 67. So for some people, for a lot of people, it will be 67. Now, the myth there is that you can retire at any age your retirement savings allows. Now, for superannuation, the maximum age is age. So if you're age 60 and retired, you can access your superannuation in part or in full, completely tax free. So that hasn't changed. What the myth is that some people assume they can't access their superannuation until age 67.
I actually I like this one as a good talking point for people, because it gets back to something that we feel very strongly about, which is taking control of your retirement, which is even the language that is used around this, which is they've put the retirement age up as though it's it's out of our control. Whatever the retirement age is, we just have to kind of go along with that. That's not how our system works. Our system in Australia, our financial system, is that you should be aiming to be a self-funded retiree. So it's up to you to take control of when you will have enough in retirement savings to support the income that you need. And this is kind of our whole attitude and what we work with people to do in that last 10 years of their work is to take control and work out what is that target of how much will I actually need to support the lifestyle that I want, and what can I do now to make that happen. So it's not about what they say or what the government decides or anything like that. It's what can I do now to put myself in a position to retire when I want to retire.
Great point to wrap up, I think, Dallas. So we've been looking forward to this one for a while. Yep. So thanks for listening. Hope everyone enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to the Money Over 50 podcast with Lighthouse Financial Advisors. We look forward to catching up again soon.